Joyce Kim never expected her life to split into two different versions of herself. But Seoul had a way of doing that to people. By day, she was Director Kim, the woman who walked into boardrooms at Hanwoo Electronics with her natural hair pulled back into a sleek bun, her blazer sharp enough to cut through the corporate nonsense that tried to diminish her. She'd moved to Korea 3 years ago on a contract that was supposed to last 6 months. But her analytics work was so precise, so transformative, that they'd promoted her twice. Her Korean colleagues called her Boss Joyce with genuine respect, bowing slightly when she passed, asking her opinion on everything from quarterly projections to where to get the best tteokbokki in Gangnam. But the moment she clocked out, that woman disappeared. After hours, Joyce was somebody completely different. A woman who wore her confidence like perfume, who knew every underground club in Itaewon, who could make an entire room laugh with a perfectly timed joke delivered in her accented Korean. She'd learned that in Seoul, there were multiple ways to exist, and she'd claimed both of hers unapologetically. "Girl, you're coming tonight and I'm not hearing any excuses," her friend Minji said, bursting into Joyce's office at 5:47 p.m. on a Friday. Minji worked in marketing 2 floors down and had appointed herself Joyce's personal social coordinator. "I got us into the crystalline party. Do you know how exclusive this is?" Joyce looked up from her computer, raising an eyebrow. "Crystalline? Isn't that the modeling agency thing?" "Yes, it's their annual showcase party. Models, photographers, fashion people, chaebols. Basically everyone hot and important." Minji perched on the edge of Joyce's desk, her eyes gleaming. "And before you say you don't belong there, remember that you're gorgeous and I already told them I'm bringing my stunning friend from America. I'm from Chicago, not a runway. Which is exactly why you need to come. You're real. These people are so polished they're basically holograms." Minji grabbed Joyce's hand. "Please? I can't go alone, and you've been working late every night this week. You need fun." Joyce glanced at the spreadsheet still glowing on her screen, then back at Minji's hopeful face. The truth was, she'd been feeling restless lately. At 31, she'd built an impressive career, had an apartment in Gangnam with a view of the Han River, had friends and freedom. But something felt incomplete, like she was waiting for a chapter to begin that she hadn't known she'd been anticipating. "Fine," Joyce said, shutting her laptop. "But I'm not wearing anything uncomfortable." 3 hours later, Joyce stood in front of her mirror barely recognizing herself. She'd chosen a burnt orange silk slip dress that caught the light when she moved, paired with her favorite leather jacket and gold hoops that her mother had sent from Chicago. Her hair was out in its full natural glory, thick coils that framed her face like a crown. She'd lined her lips in a deep brown and added a gloss that made them look like they were telling secrets. Minji whistled when Joyce opened the door. "Now that is what I'm talking about. You look like money and trouble had a baby. Is that a compliment?" "The highest one I know." The crystalline party was being held at a private venue in Cheongdam-dong, the kind of place that didn't have a sign because if you needed a sign, you didn't belong there. The entrance was marked only by a red rope and 2 security guards who checked Minji's name against a list before nodding them through. Inside, the space was transformed into something between a gallery and a fever dream. Models draped themselves over velvet furniture like living sculptures. Photographers moved through the crowd with cameras that probably cost more than Joyce's car. The music was deep and hypnotic, the kind that made your heartbeat adjust to its rhythm. "I told you," Minji shouted over the bass. "Hot people central." Joyce laughed, following her friend to the bar. The bartender, a woman with silver hair and perfect winged eyeliner, made them drinks that came smoking with dry ice. Joyce took a sip of hers and tasted lychee, vodka, and something floral she couldn't name. "To bad decisions and good stories," Minji toasted, clinking her glass against Joyce's. "I'll drink to that." They moved through the party, Minji introducing Joyce to people whose names she immediately forgot. A photographer who'd shot for Vogue Korea. A designer who made handbags that cost more than Joyce's monthly rent. A model who was apparently famous on Instagram, though Joyce had never heard of her. Everyone was beautiful in that carefully constructed way, like they'd been assembled by a team rather than born. Joyce was starting to feel pleasantly buzzed when someone announced they were playing a game. "Musical chairs!" A woman in a white suit shouted, and suddenly the crowd was cheering. Someone cleared space in the center of the room, arranging chairs in a circle while the DJ switched to something more playful. "Oh no," Joyce said, but Minji was already pulling her into the circle. "Come on. It'll be hilarious." The game started, and Joyce found herself laughing despite her protests. There was something absurd about watching Korea's most beautiful people scrambling for chairs like children at a birthday party. The music pumped, people circled, and one by one, chairs disappeared. Joyce was good at this game. She'd grown up with 3 brothers and had developed competitive instincts early. She was fast, strategic, always aware of which chair would be easiest to claim. The circle grew smaller. 8 people, then 6, then 4. The music was building to a crescendo when Joyce spotted her target. A chair slightly isolated from the others. She calculated the distance, the timing, the exact moment she'd need to move. The music stopped. Joyce lunged for the chair and landed squarely on something that definitely wasn't furniture. It took her brain a moment to process what had happened. She'd sat down, yes, but instead of the hard surface of a chair, she'd landed on something warm, something solid, something that was definitely a human lap. "Oh my God," she started, trying to scramble up. "I'm so sore." "Don't." The word was quiet but absolute. A hand settled on her waist. Not grabbing, not pulling, just holding, steadying her. Joyce froze. "Stay," the voice said, and this time she heard the accent. Korean, but with something else underneath it. Cultured, educated, dangerous. She turned her head slowly, and that's when she saw him. He was possibly the most beautiful man she'd ever seen in person. And in Korea, that was saying something. Sharp jawline. Eyes so dark they looked black in the dim light. Hair pushed back from his face in a way that probably took no effort but looked like art. He wore a simple black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk. But it was his expression that caught her. He was looking at her like she was the most interesting thing in the room, like everyone else had suddenly stopped existing. Joyce found her voice. "I was aiming for the chair." His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile but held amusement. "And yet you found something much better." The crowd had gone quiet around them. Joyce could feel eyes watching, could sense the shift in energy. Whoever this man was, people were aware of him, wary of him. "I don't usually make a habit of sitting on strangers," Joyce said, finding her composure. "But when I do, I commit to it fully." Now he did smile, and it transformed his face from beautiful to devastating. "I appreciate commitment. I can tell." She gestured at his hand, still resting on her waist. "You've got quite the grip there. Would you prefer I let you go?" Joyce considered this. She should say yes, should stand up, laugh it off, rejoin Minji who was staring at them with her mouth open. Should remember that she didn't do this. Didn't flirt with random men at parties. Didn't let herself get distracted by a pretty face and a dangerous smile. But something in his eyes stopped her. Something that felt like recognition, like the universe had decided to be chaotic and interesting on a random Friday night. "I prefer," Joyce said slowly, "to know the name of the man whose lap I'm occupying. Kang Yeonjun." He said it like it should mean something. Didn't. Not to Joyce. "Well, Kang Yeonjun, I'm Joyce Kim. And normally I'm much better at musical chairs." "I hope not," Yeonjun said. "This is far more memorable." Someone cleared their throat loudly. The game had ended. A winner declared, but no one was moving. The air felt charged with something Joyce couldn't name. "Perhaps," Yeonjun said, his voice dropping lower, meant only for her. "We should continue this conversation somewhere quieter?" Every instinct Joyce had developed in 3 years of Seoul nightlife was screaming at her to be careful. She didn't know this man, didn't know why everyone was watching them like they were witnessing something significant, didn't know why her heart was racing like she'd just run up 10 flights of stairs. But she'd moved to Korea on instinct, had built her career on calculated risks, had lived her double life because she believed in following the pull of interesting possibilities. "Okay," Joyce said. "But if you're a serial killer, I should warn you. I'm terrible at being a victim. Very loud. Incredibly inconvenient." Yeonjun laughed, and the sound wrapped around her like smoke. "I'll keep that in mind." He stood, helping her up with a gentleness that contradicted the intensity in his eyes. His hand stayed on the small of her back as he guided her through the crowd, people parting for them like water. Minji caught Joyce's eye, making wild gestures that Joyce interpreted as either be careful or get his number, or possibly, what the hell is happening? Joyce just shrugged, following Yeonjun toward a staircase that led to a quieter level of the venue. She had no idea she was walking into a story that would completely rewrite her carefully constructed Korean life. Had no idea that the man guiding her with such careful confidence was someone whose name made powerful people nervous, whose business dealings happened in shadows, whose world operated by rules she didn't know existed. All Joyce knew was that for the first time in years, she felt like something was beginning. And she'd never been very good at walking away from a beginning. The upper level was a different world. Where downstairs had been all flash and performance, up here was intimate, low lighting, private booths, the kind of space where serious conversations happened. Yeonjun led Joyce to a corner booth with a view of the entire party below, but positioned so they had privacy. "So this is where the VIPs hide," Joyce said, sliding into the booth. "I was wondering where the actual party was. You weren't enjoying yourself downstairs?" Yeonjun sat across from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something woody and expensive. "Oh, I was having a great time. Nothing says Friday night like watching beautiful people pretend not to care about being beautiful." She accepted a drink from a server who appeared without being summoned. Something amber in a crystal glass. "But this is nice too. Quieter. I can actually hear myself think." "And what are you thinking?" Joyce took a sip of her drink. Whiskey, smooth and probably older than she was. "I'm thinking that you're someone important, based on how everyone reacted when I landed on you. I'm thinking you're used to getting what you want. And I'm thinking you're wondering if I'm going to be impressed by any of it." Yeonjun's eyebrows rose slightly. "Observant. It's literally my job. I analyze patterns and data for a living." She leaned back, studying him. "So which is it? Old money? New money? K-pop executive? Underground poker champion?" He laughed genuinely this time. "None of the above. Well, some of the above. It's complicated. Complicated is my favorite flavor." "Is it?" He tilted his head, and Joyce realized he was studying her just as carefully as she was studying him. "You're not like the others here. Because I'm black? Trust me. I noticed I'm usually the only one in the room." "No." His voice was firm. "Because you're real. Everyone downstairs is performing some version of themselves. But you just sat on a stranger's lap and turned it into a conversation. No pretense. No calculation." "Oh, there was definitely calculation," Joyce corrected. "I calculated that chair was empty. I was wrong, but my math was solid." Yeonjun smiled, and Joyce felt it in her chest. Dangerous. This man was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with whatever made people nervous around him. "Tell me about your complicated life." Joyce Kim, who works with data. So she did. She told him about Chicago winters and kimchi jjigae, about being the only black woman in most of her meetings and how she'd learned to make her difference an advantage, about her brothers who video called her every Sunday demanding to know if she was eating well, about how she'd built two versions of herself in Seoul because she refused to be just one thing. "By day, I'm corporate Joyce, blazers, analytics, quarterly reports. By night, I'm whatever I want to be. Some nights, I want to be dancing until 3 a.m. Other nights, I want to be home with a book and my cat." "You have a cat?" "Malcolm. He's orange and judgmental. We're perfect for each other." Yeonjun laughed, and Joyce realized she liked making him laugh. Liked the way his carefully controlled expression broke into something genuine. "What about you?" she asked. "What's your complicated story?" "I work in acquisitions," he said carefully. "Family business. My father built something significant, and I'm continuing his work." "Acquisitions." Joyce rolled the word around. "That's delightfully vague. It has to be. Mysterious acquisitions man with a name that makes people nervous." She leaned forward. "You know I'm going to Google you the second I get home. You won't find much. Even more suspicious. Perhaps." His eyes held hers. "Or perhaps some things are better learned through experience than search engines." The air between them felt electric. Joyce knew she should be careful. Everything about this screamed complications she didn't need. But there was something in the way he looked at her, like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve slowly, that made her want to stay in this booth forever. So tell me, Yeonjun said, his voice dropping lower, why is someone like you single? Joyce almost choked on her drink. Who says I'm single? You are. Confident. Observant. He echoed her earlier word. No ring. No defensive body language when I touch you. No mention of anyone when you talked about your life. And the way you're looking at me suggests you're not thinking about someone else. Maybe I'm just a terrible person in a relationship. You're not. You don't know that. I know enough. He leaned forward, matching her posture. You're single because you refuse to settle. Because you've built a life you love and you're not willing to compress yourself into something smaller to make room for the wrong person. Because you'd rather be alone than be half of yourself. Joyce felt her breath catch. That's specific. Am I wrong? No, she admitted. I dated a guy last year. Nice guy, decent job, liked all the right things. But he wanted Day Joyce. Wanted me to be professional and polished and appropriate all the time. Couldn't handle that I also wanted to be the woman who dances on tables at 2 a.m. His loss. Definitely his loss. I'm fantastic on tables. Yeonjun's laugh was low and warm. I don't doubt it. They talked for hours. The party continued below them, but Joyce barely noticed. Yeonjun told her about growing up in Seoul, about studying abroad in London, about the pressure of family expectations. He was careful with his words, Joyce noticed, never quite saying what his family business actually was, dancing around specifics. But his stories were vivid. Late nights in his father's office, learning to read people before he could read books, understanding that power was about perception as much as reality. You're doing it again, Joyce said around midnight. Doing what? Being delightfully vague about what you actually do. Does it bother you? Joyce considered this. It should. She'd learned to be wary of men with secrets, men who lived in shadows. But sitting here with Yeonjun felt different. He wasn't hiding to deceive, he was protecting something. Whether it was her or himself, she wasn't sure. Not yet, she said honestly. But I reserve the right to be bothered later. Fair enough. Though I should warn you, I'm from Chicago. We don't do vague well. If you keep being mysterious, I'm gonna start making up stories about what you really do. Such as international art thief, secret agent, professional cat burglar, K-drama villain. She counted on her fingers. Professional gambler, vampire, CEO of a company that makes those tiny umbrellas for drinks. Those are quite varied. I contain multitudes. Yeonjun reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. Have dinner with me tomorrow. Joyce's heart did something complicated in her chest. That's very direct. I don't believe in wasting time when I know what I want. And what do you want? To know what you're like when you're not sitting on my lap at a party. His thumb traced small circles on her palm. To hear more about Malcolm the judgmental cat. To understand how someone becomes two different people in the same city. To make you laugh like you did when you told me about your brothers. Joyce knew she should say no. Knew that men who talked like poetry and touched like promises were usually trouble. Knew that she had a good life, a simple life, and adding someone like Yeonjun to it would complicate everything. But she'd never been good at choosing simple over interesting. Okay, she said, but I picked the place. And if you're secretly boring, I'm leaving. Deal. They exchanged numbers, Yeonjun walking her down to find Minji, who'd been texting increasingly frantic messages for the past 2 hours. His hand stayed on her back the entire time, a touch that felt both protective and possessive. Text me your address tomorrow, he said at the entrance. I'll pick you up at 7. What should I wear? Whatever makes you feel like yourself. Then he did something that made Joyce's knees weak. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles while maintaining eye contact. It was old-fashioned and devastating and completely unfair. Good night, Joyce Kim. Good night, mysterious acquisitions man. In the taxi back to Gangnam, Minji turned to Joyce with wide eyes. Do you have any idea who that was? Kang Yeonjun. He works in acquisitions. Minji laughed, slightly hysterical. Acquisitions. Oh my God, Joyce, that's one way to put it. What do you mean? I mean that Kang Yeonjun is… Minji paused, choosing her words carefully. He's someone important, someone you don't just casually sit on, someone whose family is… connected. Connected how? Like connected. Like his family owns half of Seoul connected. Like people don't say no to him connected. Joyce felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of business is his family in? The kind where it's better not to ask too many questions. Minji grabbed Joyce's hands. I'm not saying he's dangerous. I'm just saying he's… significant. And you just sat on his lap and made him laugh, which is apparently something that never happens. Should I cancel dinner? Are you insane? No, but just… be careful, okay? This isn't like your normal dating life. This is different. Joyce looked out the window at Seoul streaming past. Neon lights, endless buildings, a city that never quite slept. She thought about Yeonjun's careful words, the way people had watched them, the feeling that she'd stumbled into something bigger than a chance meeting. She should be scared, should recognize all the warning signs flashing in neon. But all she could think about was the way he'd looked at her, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. I'll be careful, Joyce promised. Joyce changed outfits 4 times before settling on dark jeans, a cream silk blouse, and her leather jacket, the uniform of someone trying to look like they weren't trying. Malcolm watched from the bed with feline judgment. Don't look at me like that, she told him. You're not the one going to dinner with a man who might be a crime lord. Malcolm yawned, unimpressed. Her phone buzzed. Downstairs. Joyce grabbed her bag, gave Malcolm one final scratch behind his ears, and headed down. Yeonjun was leaning against a sleek black car. Not flashy, but clearly expensive, looking unfairly attractive in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater. You're punctual, she said by way of greeting. You sound surprised. Powerful men usually think their time is more valuable than everyone else's. My mother would kill me if I kept a woman waiting. He opened the car door for her. She raised me better than that. The restaurant was in Samcheong-dong, tucked away on a quiet street, the kind of place locals guarded like secrets. Small, intimate, with a chef who apparently knew Yeonjun by name. You come here often? Joyce asked as they were led to a private room. When I want to actually taste my food instead of being watched eating it. The meal was extraordinary, courses that felt like art, each bite deliberately composed. They talked easily, naturally, the conversation flowing like they'd known each other for years instead of hours. Yeonjun asked about her work, actually listening when she explained analytics, asking intelligent questions that showed he understood business. You're good at this, Joyce observed over dessert. Eating, making people feel heard. It's a skill. Is that a compliment or an accusation? Both. She set down her fork. You're very carefully constructed, Kang Yeonjun. Everything you do is intentional. The way you listen, the way you ask questions, the way you touch my hand just enough to be present but not possessive. It's impressive. But it makes me wonder what you're like when you're not being careful. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. You see too much. It's my job. No, it's who you are. He leaned back, studying her. Most people see what they want to see. You see what's actually there. And what do you see when you look at me? Yeonjun was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes intense. I see someone who's built armor out of humor. Someone who's had to be twice as good to get half as far. Someone who's tired of performing but doesn't know how to stop. Someone who's lonely even though they're surrounded by people. Joyce felt her chest tighten. That's uncomfortably accurate. I told you, I'm observant too. So what now? We just see each other? 2 overly observant people trying to figure each other out. Would that be so terrible? Depends on what you're hiding. There it was, the elephant in the room, dressed in expensive clothes and careful words. Yeonjun signaled for the check, then turned to her. Take a drive with me. I want to show you something. They drove through Seoul, the city lights painting everything in gold and neon. Yeonjun drove smoothly, confidently, one hand on the wheel. He didn't speak, just let the city unfold around them. Finally, he pulled up to a building in Gangnam, tall, modern, glass reflecting the night sky. He led her inside, past security guards who bowed deeply, into a private elevator that required a key card. "Where are we going?" Joyce asked as they ascended. "My office." The elevator opened onto a penthouse floor, sleek, modern, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul. But it wasn't an office in the traditional sense. It was a command center. Multiple screens displayed what looked like business feeds. A conference table surrounded by high-end chairs. Art that was probably worth more than Joyce's apartment. "Wow," Joyce said. "This is either very impressive or very concerning." Yeonjun walked to the windows, hands in his pockets. "My family's business is complicated. We deal in acquisitions, like I said, real estate, entertainment, import-export, legitimate businesses, all properly licensed and registered. But we also operate in spaces where traditional business meets less traditional arrangements. We mediate disputes, facilitate connections, solve problems that can't be solved through normal channels." Joyce felt her stomach drop. "You're telling me you're mob-adjacent?" "I'm telling you that in Korea, power operates differently than you might expect. My family has influence, connections. We exist in the spaces between legal and extra-legal, never quite crossing the line but always aware of where the line is." "So you're a crime lord?" "I'm a businessman who understands that crime is relative." Joyce walked to the windows, looking out at the city. Her city, the place she'd made her home. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you were going to figure it out anyway. Because I don't want to lie to you. And because—" He moved to stand beside her, close but not touching. "Because when you sat on my lap last night, laughing about musical chairs, you looked at me like I was just a man. Not a Kong. Not someone to be afraid of. Just someone interesting. And I haven't felt that in a very long time. So what? I'm your escape from your crime family responsibilities. Your normal girl experience. You're not normal. You're extraordinary. You're funny and brilliant, and you see through every carefully constructed wall I've built. You scare me, Joyce, and I like being scared." Joyce turned to face him. "I should walk away. This is exactly the kind of complicated I don't need." "You should," he agreed. But you won't. Because you're just as curious as I am about what this could be." He was right, damn him. Joyce had spent 3 years building a safe life, a predictable life. And in 2 days, Yeonjun had made her want to throw all of that away for something dangerous and unknown. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them." "1, you never lie to me. I don't care how ugly the truth is. I want it. 2, I keep my independence. My job, my apartment, my life. I'm not becoming some mafia girlfriend who waits around looking decorative. 3, the second I feel unsafe or uncomfortable, I walk, and you let me go without drama." "Agreed. Just like that. Just like that." He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. "I don't want you compressed into something smaller, Joyce. I want exactly who you are: loud, funny, brilliant, fierce. I want the woman who yells at her cat and makes spreadsheets and dances on tables. All of it. You might regret that. I'm a lot. Good. I've been waiting for a lot." He kissed her then, and it felt like falling and flying at the same time. Like every rom-com she'd ever watched, and better than all of them combined. His hands were in her hair, hers fisted in his sweater, and the city sprawled beneath them like a promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Joyce laughed, bright and genuine. "What?" Yeonjun asked, smiling. "I just realized I'm dating a Korean mafia boss. My mother is going to lose her mind." "Should I be worried?" "Terrified. She's from Chicago. She knows actual mob people. She's going to have questions. I look forward to meeting her." "Liar. Completely." He kissed her again, softer this time. "But I'll do it anyway. For you." Over the next few weeks, Joyce discovered what it meant to date Kang Yeonjun. It meant security guards who materialized from nowhere. It meant private rooms in restaurants and theater boxes and cars with drivers. But it also meant Yeonjun showing up at her apartment with takeout at midnight because she texted that she was working late. It meant him learning to appreciate Malcolm's judgmental stares. It meant him sitting through her work presentations and asking genuine questions about data analytics. Her colleagues at Hanwoo Electronics noticed the change. Joyce arriving in cars that definitely weren't taxis, the subtle designer pieces that started appearing in her wardrobe. But she was still Boss Joyce, still brilliant at her job, still commanding respect in every meeting. "You're glowing," her work friend Sumin said one afternoon. "New skincare routine or new man? Can't it be both?" Girl, spill. But Joyce kept Yeonjun mostly private, understanding instinctively that their relationship existed in its own space. Separate from her work life, from his business dealings, a bubble where they could just be two people falling in love. Because that's what was happening. Against all logic and reason, Joyce was falling completely in love with him. She loved his dry humor, the way he could deliver a devastating comment with the straightest face. Loved how he listened, really listened when she talked. Loved that he never tried to change her, never suggested she be quieter or smaller or more appropriate. 3 months in, lying in his bed in his penthouse, soul glittering outside the windows, Yeonjun traced patterns on her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That this is crazy. That I moved to Seoul for a 6-month contract and ended up building a whole life. That I never expected you. That I'm terrified and exhilarated and I don't know what happens next." "What do you want to happen next?" Joyce turned to face him. "I want to keep being surprised by you. I want Malcolm to eventually accept that you're staying. I want to introduce you to my family and watch my brothers try to intimidate you. I want to see where this goes when we stop being careful. I stopped being careful the moment you sat on my lap. Liar. You're always careful. Not with you." He kissed her forehead. "With you, I'm completely reckless. It wasn't perfect. There were nights when Yeonjun had to leave suddenly for business and return tense and closed off. There were moments when Joyce felt the weight of his world. The eyes watching them, the whispered conversations that stopped when they entered rooms, the subtle violence that existed just beneath the surface of his polished exterior. But there were more moments of joy, of laughter, of Yeonjun showing up to her work events and charming her colleagues, of Joyce meeting his mother, a tiny, elegant woman who took one look at them together and smiled like she'd been waiting for this, of building something real in the spaces between their two complicated lives. "You know what the best part is?" Joyce said one Sunday morning, Malcolm draped across both their laps, coffee cooling on the bedside table. "What? I get to keep being both versions of myself. Corporate Joyce and after-hours Joyce. And you love them both." "I love all your versions," Yeonjun corrected, "including the one who burns toast and sings off-key in the shower and talks to her cat like he's a therapist. Malcolm is very wise. Malcolm is a menace who knocked my watch off the counter yesterday. He has excellent taste. That watch was too flashy." Yeonjun laughed, pulling her closer. Outside, Seoul hummed with life. Millions of people living their complicated stories. But inside this moment, everything was simple. A woman from Chicago, a man from Seoul's shadows, a judgmental orange cat, and a love that had started with the worst-aimed musical chairs in history. "Hey," Joyce said softly. Thank you for catching me. You sat on me. I didn't have much choice. I mean metaphorically, idiot." "Oh." Yeonjun's expression softened, his hand cupping her face. "Then you're welcome. For catching you. For being caught by you. For all of it. That was almost romantic. Almost. It would have been perfect if Malcolm wasn't staring at us like we're embarrassing him." They both looked at the cat, who indeed wore an expression of profound feline disappointment. "He'll get over it," Yeonjun said, kissing her. And as Joyce kissed him back, soul spreading infinite beneath them, Malcolm sighing his judgment, she thought about beginnings and middles and all the chapters yet to be written. She'd come to Korea for a job. She'd stayed for a life. And she'd found love in the last place she'd expected. On the lap of a beautiful, dangerous man at a party where she didn't belong. But then again, Joyce had never been very good at staying where she belonged. She'd always preferred creating her own space, her own story, her own version of what love could look like. And this complicated, unexpected, absolutely perfect, was exactly the story she wanted to live.
So besties, in this story we learned that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin when we stop trying to fit into perfect boxes and embrace our authentic, multifaceted self. True connection happens not when we hide our complexities, But when we find someone who celebrates every version of who we are, the professional and the playful, the cautious and the spontaneous. Besties, be unapologetically yourself, stay open to the unexpected, and trust that the right person will love all your contradictions, not despite them, but because of them. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share.